Okay. Woof. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I think it's still morning. Is it still morning? God, it's just afternoon. Ugh. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Still no battery for my camera, so we're doing a live stream, but I think that today's video will actually work better without me editing it. I don't know. It's more of a discussion-y type video, so I don't think it'll be quite as noticeable that it's unedited until I do one of those things where I stare off for a good 15 seconds and you're just sitting there watching me stare off for a good 15 seconds. But today I wanted to talk about the things going on with Logan Paul on YouTube. And yes, we are not a huge viral channel with millions and millions of subscribers. And in fact, we don't even have like a tenth of that. We barely have like a tenth of that. Uh, Not even a tenth of that. We have like what 1%, 1% of that. And I also made the decision to make none of that apparent in the searchable tags, in the description, in the title of the video. And part of that is because I want to discuss a sort of the viral issue where today's media goes viral and suddenly it's getting millions and millions of clicks, and part of that is by everybody contributing and using the hashtag and using the keywords and using the title, and it just feeds into the issue rather than actually changing it. So when people like the Huffington Post and people like the I don't know, there's real media outlets, real newspaper articles that have written articles about what happened with Logan Paul. And if you haven't seen that, I'm not going to link to anything. You can Google it. It's not that difficult of a thing to do. I'm purposefully not having that anywhere near what I'm doing, but you can find it pretty readily. If you don't know what's happening, please go Google that and then come back and discuss this with us. But he's actually gained subscribers from this whole thing, despite it being a horrendous, horrendous thing that happened, where he goes to Japan and not only in the videos that are still on his channel, essentially harasses Japanese citizen, creates traffic issues, assaults a police officer. If you consider throwing a giant plush Pokeball at a police officer who's trying to do his job, harassing, and I would consider that an issue. He interrupts business. He goes into a business and causes issues. All of that is problematic. But with these real news outlets and with all of these big YouTubers like Boogie 2998, 2988, Boogie 2988, Boogie, and that Japanese man Yuta, and I mean, I know Anna kind of tweeted about it. Like all of these really big, the Third Pew, obviously, the Third Pew made a video. All these people are making videos or tweets or whatever, responding to it, and it's actually just feeding back into Logan Paul and gaining him subscribers despite all of these issues that are happening. And I, as someone who studied anthropology in school, and had a major issue with cultural anthropology because of something similar to this, where people are like Logan Paul thought it would be a great idea to go to Japan and film his daily vlogs in Japan, where he essentially makes fun of what is Japanese culture. Like, haha, these people are throwing coins in a well, as if Western people don't do that, throw coins in a well. As if Western people don't cleanse themselves with water. If you go into any sort of Catholic church, you'll see the same thing, but because it's at a temple, it's weird and interesting to wash your hands with the holy water that is there. To disrupt religious practices by doing that and actually getting kicked out of the temple. To go to a suicide forest and make a funny video about it's haunted without actually taking the minute to stop and think, or even to do any sort of research about the forest itself. Oh, a suicide forest. That's going to be a fun video topic, right? Let's go and have fun and make jokes and see an actual dead body and make jokes, because you're not looking at what is actually the root of the issue. You're looking at, oh, it's a sensationalist thing that there is a a physical place that has so many suicides there that it's called the suicide forest, without looking at the problem of there's a reason that that many people are committing suicide in Japan. Japan actually has a huge issue with suicide, and despite it being a giant cultural taboo, like it is both a giant cultural taboo and very common in their culture. And when you don't stop and think about the antecedent to the issue, why this forest is called a suicide forest, why there are signs posted everywhere that have, suicide hotlines. Trigger warning for suicide a little bit late. I didn't want this to be about it, but that's part of it, that he's not looking at going to Japan as informing himself. Like, if I were to travel to Japan, I would be going to Japan to learn about the culture, to see how they do things differently, but rather than being like, wow, isn't it so funny that the Japanese do it this way versus Americans, because every other culture is so weird and backwards, um, which is how a lot of cultural anthropology classes could go. I had some classes where it was very much like, no, Western culture has impressed itself upon so many other cultures that we actually don't have other cultures in the same way. It's just flecks and threads off of Western culture. Um, and then some classes that were very much more oriented towards, here's the funny things that the Tonga do. And it bothered me because I'm not doing this to do cultural tourism. I'm not doing this to go and experience something funny and then come home and tell my friends how funny it was. Because we all have this inclination to do it, and especially in the modern time when you can daily vlog and show videos and make a funny joke about it, and millions of people will find it funny and laugh and subscribe to you. Um, it's not okay. Like, people need to take their hand off of the trigger finger and take their hashtags out of it and stop trying to go viral and stop trying to spread things that they don't actually know a lot about. Not to say that something actually educated and researched is ever going to go viral, or is anybody going to go viral because they saw my vegetarian review from the point of view of a Westerner reading this translated text who has studied Korean language and Korean culture. Um, Most people won't see that. Some people will see some of the bigger YouTubers who made videos on that, and that's fine. But the actual niche market of people who are well researched, well developed, make these videos that they put their heart and soul into, they're not going to go viral. The thing that's going to go viral is a dog hitting a dude's junk with his head, because it's funny and it's quick and it's non-confrontational, despite in some ways being very confrontational. Um, but yes, I wanted to talk about that. I also wanted to talk about this idea of the American buffoon, which in some ways our president, the ultimate representative of the Americans of Americans words, is a great example of that. Of the, I am not educated, I don't care what other people think because I'm American and American is best no matter what you think of me. The oh, the Japanese people are so nice because they're not yelling at me for being an idiot. If I did this in America, I would be getting yelled at right now. That doesn't mean you should do it in Japan. It just means the Japanese culture doesn't, they're not going to yell at you. That's not how, they're just going to be like very inwardly angry and hope you move on your way and continue with their day. The police are going to show up and be like, you can't be here because you're disrupting, our normal day-to-day lives. You're causing traffic issues. There's a much subtler people, and just because they're not gonna yell at you doesn't mean that it's okay to do those things. It's still not accepted. And yet, I know that he does that stuff here in America too. Um, it's just he's forgetting that in Japan, he's suddenly representing all of America, and that one of the people who just had to experience that might write off all Americans. I'm not saying that most Japanese people would do that, or that the Japanese people who had to experience Logan Paul will. But it's possibility because you are a minority, and now you could be the only American that they meet for months or weeks, or say they're from a small rural village in Japan somewhere. They're being a tourist in Tokyo and they see Logan Paul and they're like, God, Americans suck. Because all of the attention that is being shown and all of this media that is being shown is of a person who is literally a buffoon, uneducated, self-important, doesn't give a shit about what other people think, and it gives the rest of us not just a bad name, but it makes us embarrassed. Um, as I have grown up, have become more and more embarrassed to be an American. Most people should be proud of their country, and I have found that by and large, most Americans aren't a big fan of America. Some of them are pretty proud of like their local things. Like I'm mostly proud to be from Massachusetts. I like my state. I like what we stand for. My beliefs go with my state most of the time. But I don't necessarily ever want to go somewhere and be like, yeah, I'm American. I love being an American. America's great. We stand up for freedom and peace, and we don't. And if I were to go to another country, I might consider being, oh, I'm Canadian, because Canada has a much nicer, like, not just like the stereotypes of a Canadian are just generally calmer and nicer, but because even how similar our cultures are, we're so different in that America, because it's America, feels like it needs to like be so proud of itself to the point of ignoring how dumb it's being. Does that even make sense? Like to never apologize and never admit that you could have made a mistake, because you can't, because you're America, or you're American, you're so good. Um, it's it's so problematic. So you have this thing where this stereotype that already exists is being exemplified, perpetuated, and perhaps even solidified in some people's minds because of what Logan Paul did. You have the fact that it's gone viral, that all of these news outlets that don't normally talk about YouTube are talking about YouTube, that all of these people who do normally talk about YouTube are adding views, not because they want to add views, but because they want to talk about the issue, like I am now. And the only way for people to find them, to listen to their point of view, is to use searchable terms, to use hashtags, to use these forums that feed into this discussion, and feed into this frenzy, this media frenzy that's going on. And you have this cultural tourism where there's people who are trying to talk about their perspective on the culture and why it's wrong, or why they're talking from their own culture, and completely ignore the angle of it being in Japan and being Japanese culture, which is fine. Talk about what you know. And if what you know is that it's inappropriate to make jokes in front of a dead body who died by suicide, then by all means talk about that, because that's the case. If you are from the perspective like Anna Akana, of somebody who actually lived with a family member committing suicide, and you want to discuss what it's like to perhaps have to live every day knowing that that happened to somebody, and what it would feel like to have somebody be so crass in that situation, by all means do that. If you're somebody like the Japanese man Yuta, who has a fairly Western following, like a good amount of Americans, British people, Australians, just Western nations in general following you, and you are Japanese and talk about it from the perspective of being Japanese, you have this. But it's all coming back to this point that he thought it would be funny and interesting to go to another culture and exploit them and create this cultural tourism, which happens all the time, especially in daily vlogging type situations. There's people who do it very well, who go to another culture and experience it. Watch any of the Vlog Brothers stuff that they've done with other cultures, or Rosina House Rojas has done Creators for Change in a very positive way. There's also people like Logan Paul who do it in a very negative way, where they're doing it in a sensationalist way to get views, to not create a change, to not educate people, but just to get money. And I talk about books, so I can't even, I don't do that. So I can't even talk about why that would be funny. I'm not here to make money. I'm not here to get all of the views. I just wanted to talk about this thing. And I know it's not going to get any views and nobody's going to watch it. And perhaps because it's unedited, that it's a bit all over the place. But I wanted to talk about how there are these three things that are all feeding into something and actually creating a bigger problem. Logan Paul has more subscribers now than he did before this happened. And that should not be the case. It just should not be the case, but it is the case. Um, and I don't know what to do because the way that the internet works, we need to use those tags. We need to use the key functions. We need to feed into the media frenzy and become part of it and maybe take a little bit of that fame for ourselves. Um, and I don't know that there's a right answer, and I don't know what we can do about it. I don't think that there's a way to fix cultural tourism. I don't know that there's a way to fix um, the way that going viral works and the way that the internet works when it comes to greed and selfishness and pride. Um, I don't know that there is any way to fix any of it, but I wanted to talk about it because it's a bigger issue than just what people have talked about. And I wanted to talk about how all of these things sort of feed back to one particular problem. And they create their own problems. They cause their own problems. They perpetuate their own problems. But there is always going to be something at the root. Where was the mistake? What can we do to fix it? If there's nothing to do to fix it, then keep on keeping on, guys. Keep talking about books. That's fine. We can talk about books. I love books. Books help me escape all of these issues and crises that I feel on a day-to-day basis. But aside from that being a terrible way to start the new year, I had the flu. Also, a terrible way to start the new year. I'm doing okay as far as mental health is concerned. I've been working the last couple months on self, um, just self help stuff, like what I can do to make sure that I'm okay. Which includes reading. I have read so many books, and I haven't done any reviews of them on here because I needed to do my wrap up last week, and I wanted to talk about this week. So maybe next week I'll do a review. Um, and I'll try and figure out a way to do that without a camera. That's also a problem. I don't have a camera. Um, oh well. I hope that you guys are having lovely weeks and are doing okay and aren't dying and aren't struggling, and even though it's cold and gray and seasonal depression is a thing, I hope you're doing okay. I hope you have so many people that are creating things and inspiring you, whether it's a book, whether it's a video, whether it's a film, whether it's just some street art. I hope that you feel inspired this week, and I will talk to you again probably Wednesday because we're supposed to be doing our last book club video for last year because it got pushed over into this year on Wednesday. So Gretchen and I and Taylor and I will all be talking about that on Wednesday. So I hope that you come back for that live stream. It will be in the evening, and we will be discussing books, and it'll be much different than discussing this right now. Have a good day, and I will see you then.